Thank you, and welcome everyone to the open session of Fiscal Planning, Finance and Building Committee meeting of Tuesday, September the 10th. And thank you, everyone, for your patience. We needed another 15 minutes or so from our closed session to finish business there. But we are here now, and I'm calling to order this open session. Item 2 is a motion to convene into closed session. Trustee Pomoli, Trustee Davies, second. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Item 3 is to rise and report from the closed session. I will rise and report that items from the closed session regarding the minutes of the Physical Planning, Finance and Building Committee meeting of June the 5th, 2024, the expression of interest to acquire the former St. Gertrude Catholic Elementary School, an easement on the North Park Secondary School site, and a procurement activity report for May, June, and July 2024 be received, and the recommendations therein be approved. Can we move that? Yes. Thank you, Trustee Davies. Trustee McDonald, second. And all in favor of the rise and report? That's carried. Can we have the acknowledgement, please, of the traditional lands?
The land upon which we work, live, and sustain ourselves is the ancestral and treaty lands of the Michizagig Anishinaabe, also known today as the Mississaugas of the Credit, the rightful caretakers and title holders of this land. We also recognize the rich pre-contact history and relationships which include the Anishinaabe and the Ongwe-Hongwe.
Since European contact, this land continues to be home to Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. As responsible community members, we value the diversity, dignity, and worth of all people.
Colonialism displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples of their ancestral land
and continues to deny their basic human rights, dignities, and freedoms.
We are committed to learning true history to reconcile, make reparations, and fulfill our treaty obligations to the original peoples and our collective responsibilities to the lands, water, animals, and each other for future generations.
Thank you. Item 5 is approval of the agenda. We've all seen the agenda. Can we move that to the floor? Trustee Promoli, Trustee Bailey, second. All in favor of approving the agenda as it is. Item 6 is declarations of conflict of interest. Are there any declarations to be made? Seeing none, we'll move to item 7, which is approval of the minutes. These are all here for our approval. Item 7.1 is to stop our student transportation of Peel Region minutes from April the 11th, 2024. Move those to the floor, please. Trustee Joe Hall, and seconded by Trustee Promoli. All in favor of approval of those minutes? That is carried. Thank you. 7.2 is a Budget Development Committee meeting of May 27th, 2024. This is quite some time ago, but we do have the minutes here as our recall. Trustee McDonald, move that one, please. Trustee Promoli, seconded. All in favor of approval of those items at 7.2, those minutes? That is carried. Thank you. 7.3 is a Budget Development Committee meeting of June the 4th, 2024. Trustee Davis, move that, please. And Trustee Joe Hall, second. That is on the floor. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. All in favor of approval? We will approve that. Thank you. Item 7.4 is Fiscal Planning, Finance and Building Committee meeting of June the 5th. Trustee McDonald, move that, please. Trustee Davies, second it. It's on the floor. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none. All in favor of approval of those minutes? That is carried as well. Thank you. Item 8 is delegations. We have none. Item 9 are staff reports. 9.1 is the 2024-2025 Capital Priorities Program submission. Here for our information presented by Suzanne Blakeman. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair Cameron, and through you. Planning staff will be submitting 5 projects on September 16th for the Ministry's 2024-25 round of the Capital Priorities Program. Priority ranking was based on the Ministry's assertion that in order for business cases to be successful, projects must be shovel-ready and address existing accommodation needs. I just want to take this moment to remind trustees that in the past, we've submitted more projects because the business cases didn't have to be so complex in the past. Now, because of the ministry's stress of shovel ready, when we do business cases, they have to have a complete timeline, a costing analysis, and very detailed, which takes a lot of time to prepare, and also there's an associated cost. So that's why we're only submitting 5 projects this time. Our number one priority and being submitted for the 9th time is Mount Pleasant Secondary School. This project is required to relieve the growing enrollment pressure at Mayfield, Jean Augustine, and Fletcher's Meadow secondary schools. The site has been owned by the board for many years. Second priority is an addition at Elm Drive Public School in the city center area of Mississauga. When we applied for capital funding for Elm Drive, we requested an 850 pupil place school, but only received funding approval for 650. This addition, if approved, will reduce the number of portables required at the school. Priorities 3 through 5 include the TL Kennedy Secondary School Replacement School, which will also be a joint use project with the City of Mississauga. Brightwater Public School, which will serve the new community growing at Mississauga Road and Lakeshore Boulevard in Mississauga. And Castlemore East Secondary School in the Castlemore community. Although these last 3 projects are not shovel-ready, they serve as a signal to the ministry of the upcoming need for these schools. The ministry has stated that it expects to make capital priority funding announcements in the spring of 2025, and we will come back to this committee with those announcements. Thank you, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you for the report. Let's move this to the floor. Trustee Promoli. Thank you. Trustee McDonald, second that. It's on the floor. Are there any questions? Yes, Trustee Promoli.
Yeah, thank you so much for this report and the updates here. I just want to make sure that I understood. So Elm Drive currently has, okay, so you're hoping to get it up to a school that could accommodate 850 students, and the ministry would only approve it to go to 650. So we are adding space for an additional 236, and there will still be portables, correct? Did they give you any reasoning why they would not allow you to expand to the point that it would actually accommodate the students who go there or who will be going there?
At the time they said, well, if you actually need those extra spaces, you can put an addition on the school. So that's what we're doing now. Sorry, through you, Chair Cameron.
So through your chair, so we already have portables there, and we know that we have students that we're busing to other schools from that neighborhood, correct? Already?
That's correct.
So if I could just add a comment, that what you're talking about is something that was very short-sighted, right? It was maybe cheaper, easier to hand over money for 650 pupil places than 850. And this is not the first and only school that has experienced this, right? We have challenges with this where we get underfunded at the beginning, and then we have to go hand in hand for more money for additional spaces. It's very sad and it's unfortunate, but it puts our planning staff in a very awkward position to have to ask for money for an addition when sometimes the original 650 pupil by student school hasn't even been built yet, which is very weird.
Yeah. And through the chair, if I could just follow up on that, can I ask how many portables will still be there after the addition gets put on?
That's a good question, and I will have to get back to you on that and consult with my colleagues.
Fair enough. Okay. And then just if I could just for one more. So then through you, Chair. So for Brightwater, we are currently planning for 450 pupil placements. Is that based on the original 8,000 units that were planned for down in that? Oh no, that's Lakeview, right? Is this according? It's the same. It is yeah, so it is the same. Or based on the 16,000 doubling from the ministry with the MZO.
Through you, Chair, you're correct, Trustee. That was Lakeview, and we're talking about City Center.
No, sorry, I'm over to the Brightwater now.
Brightwater, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah. Brightwater's actually to the west. It's at Mississauga Road.
Lakeview.
No, okay. Lakeview is further towards Mimico. Yeah, so 2 separate developments.
Right. Okay. Sorry, not my area. So I'm okay. That's fair. Okay, so that's great. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate the update.
Thank you.
Are there any questions regarding this report? Well, good luck to our staff. We hope you get, well, I hope you get all 5, but that's not realistic. And maybe the top 2 would help us a great deal. So this has been moved. It's on the floor. We've heard the report and we've had questions. All in favor of receipt for our information? That is carried. Thank you. Item 9.2 is the status of previously approved standalone childcare capital projects. Here also for our information, a presentation by Javinder. Are you here? You're doing this? Okay. You have the microphone, sir.
Thank you. And through you, Chair Cameron, this report provides an update regarding the status of 3 previously approved standalone childcare capital projects that were approved by the Ministry of Education to be undertaken at Agnes Taylor, Shaw, and Kashmir Public Schools. These capital projects have been paused as a result of a significant funding shortfall relative to the actual cost to build these childcare spaces. It should be noted that PDSB is one of several boards in Ontario that have been affected by a lack of adequate ministry funding to address rising construction costs for standalone childcare spaces. So in other words, we are not alone and we're not unique. The 3 projects, which were comprised of additions and internal renovations, were approved several years ago, as noted in the report, through the ministry's capital priorities program for a total aggregate funding amount of $5.82 million. As the board's design and construction team worked with board-approved consultants to estimate the actual costs of construction, however, the costs were found to exceed the funding from the ministry by a significant amount, with a projected shortfall of about $12 million in total across all 3 projects. $12 million in total. While the per square foot cost of the construction of internal retrofits and additions to support childcare spaces generally exceeds that of designing purpose-built childcare spaces when constructing a brand new school, the escalation of costs in the construction market arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, as outlined on pages 3 and 4 of the report, resulted in a very sharp spike in prices. So, equipped with these updated costs in spring of 2023, board staff have submitted an approval to proceed request to the ministry to tender these projects at an aggregate cost of almost $18 million, with the request specifically outlining the need for the ministry to cover that funding shortfall of about $12 million. In August 2023, the ministry responded with an offer to provide an additional 25% in funding above and beyond what the original amount was, bringing these projects to a total aggregate funding approval of about $7.3 million. And again, that resulted in a significant shortfall from what the estimated total cost would be to actually construct these projects. So while board staff were appreciative of the additional 25% in funding, it was made abundantly clear to the ministry that this would not be sufficient. Board staff also inquired with staff from the region of Peel about whether there would be an opportunity for the region to assist PDSB in providing capital funding to support the construction of these spaces. However, the region indicated that it would not be able to do so as their focus is on providing operating funding for childcare spaces. Unfortunately, it's not possible for the PDSB to consider pooling the aggregate funding for all 3 projects towards the completion of possibly any one of these specific projects, as that is not something that the ministry would be supportive of. Furthermore, the ministry has stated in correspondence to other affected boards in recent months that it intends to redirect the announced funding for these projects towards other types of community-based childcare projects. In other words, they're basically taking the position that these projects are no longer going to be supported by them, based on the fact that the cost to incur these projects is now out has exceeded what the original funding amounts were. And I'd be pleased to take any questions.
Thank you, Controller Thomas. Let's move it to the floor. Trustee Promoli, Trustee Bailey, thank you. It's on the floor. Questions. Trustee Promoli, go ahead.
I haven't even raised my hand yet, but you knew.
Oh, you weren't.
Had the board already invested real funds in the development of these centers?
Through you, Chair, anytime that the board is undertaking any kind of work to prepare for the design and construction of any capital project, there would be some initial costs involved with planning and designing, involving using consultants and architects and other entities that would help to sort of formulate what the cost would be to incur the project. So there would have been an outlay initially of some operating dollars towards.
Through you, Chair, how many children will we have been accommodating? How many childcare spaces will we have been looking at through these three centers?
Through you, Chair, I'm just going to see if I can look that up. I should have had that noted. I believe, and perhaps Manager Blakeman would be able to chime in as well. I think these were all projects in and around 73 childcare spaces.
So 73 spaces for each of those schools. Okay. And one more through the chair. So just so that we're clear, it's about with these numbers after what the ministry was willing to come up on, it was about an $11 million shortfall to complete all three of these childcare centers.
I'm sorry, through you, Chair. Yes, it's in the neighborhood of $11 to $12 million.
Okay, and so the ministry chose not to invest this additional $11 to $12 million in Peel region to ensure that 3 times 73 students, so that's 220, about 220 kids every year will not have these childcare spaces.
Through you, Chair, that's correct.
Okay, I really appreciate all your work on this, and I'm very sorry to see these projects falling apart. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Trustee Bailey?
Through you, Chair. What stage of completion are these at? Or have they started?
Through you, Chair, these projects have not begun from a construction standpoint. So as part of the Ministry of Education's process when they approve capital projects, there's a requirement for school boards to basically obtain a cost estimate to ensure that the project can be built within the funding approval limit that the ministry provides. And in this particular case with these projects, the estimate that our staff obtained in terms of looking at what it would actually cost exceeded the amount of funding that the ministry had originally announced. And so that information was shared with the ministry. But all during that time, the PSB is not allowed to actually begin doing any work until it receives a formal approval to proceed from the ministry.
Okay, so this was from back in, through your chair, it's from back in 2017, 2018 that this process started.
Through your chair, that's correct for one of the schools, and the other two, I believe, were from the 2021-22 capital priorities round.
And so even though we hadn't gotten approval for the first one, we got the second two?
So through you, Chair, my understanding is that at the time, in 2017-18, we did receive approval for the first. And then
Hold on, sorry. You got approval, but not enough money.
Through you, Chair, the amount of funding, yes, when the ministry awards projects to school boards, any capital priorities or any capital type of project, they indicate that the board receives a certain amount of money for that project based on the ministry's funding benchmarks that they establish on their own. And it's a notional amount. And then, but as I explained earlier, we as a school board then have to go and obtain a cost consultant's report to go back to the ministry with to basically substantiate that we can build that project to within that funding amount that the ministry has set aside for us. And that was the process through which it was discovered that the costs were going to far exceed what the ministry had awarded in actual funding.
Did that come back before 2020? Through Chair, sorry.
Thank you.
So did that come back before 21, 22?
Through you, Chair, for the first project, I would have to go back and double check because this is all several years ago. But my understanding is that I think the COVID-19 pandemic also played a role in terms of delaying some of the work that happened on the very first project, and that in the end, the three of them kind of got grouped together.
Thank you for explaining.
Thank you. I would like to add that maybe some of the confusion might be in the use of the word approval. So the ministry would give us approval and they'll even tell us how much money they'll give us to build a school or a childcare center, but we can't do anything with that until what you just described, Controller Thomas, all the work that goes in to us getting approval to proceed. So it's a little bit of dangling, right? Here's some money and here's, yes, you're gonna get a new school, yes, you're gonna get childcare spaces, but you can't do anything yet until you do some more due diligence, and we'll tell you when you have the ability to proceed and go ahead and build. So we're always at the mercy, waiting for that, but the term approval might need, we always need to understand the difference between approval and approval to proceed. I think we're there now. So Trustee Davies is next, and then Trustee Ellis.
Yes, through you, Chair. The most recent project, the 2021-22 one, I'm just, again, just throwing this out there. Is there a possibility that that particular project isn't as underfunded as the one that would go all the way back to 2017? And is that possibly one of our greatest priorities? And is it maybe worth us tossing in the extra, whatever it would be, and get that one project done?
So through the chair, if I'm understanding the trustee's question, basically the amount of underfunding is listed for each of the projects in the report. So you can sort of denote how much in shortfall there was, even with the 25% additional funding that the ministry offered. But as far as being able to sort of take one of the three and work with that, as I indicated earlier, the ministry is not open to that.
So it's to take all, sorry, through you, Chair, it's take all three or take none?
Through the chair, that's essentially the answer that we've received.
In other words, they don't want us to do it. Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Ellis. You're next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, sir. I find that coming from the ministry almost like it's got to be a misunderstanding. Because if we've got a $12 million shortfall across 3 schools, and we're saying because of this shortfall, we're going to allocate this money elsewhere. I would almost be curious to know if we can try and go back to the ministry to say, hey, of these 3 locations, here's the one we need the most. We have a bona fide need for it. Your 25% increase will allow us to cover the cost for this one. Is that an option we can further explore? Because I can't imagine why the ministry would come back and say no. It almost feels like a misunderstanding.
So through you, Chair, very good question. There are a couple of complicating factors involved with this. One being that we're not the only board in this situation. Trustees may have heard through media outlets that the Toronto District School Board, the Toronto Catholic District School Board, had several more projects beyond just the 3 that we have. They've got multiples of 3 in terms of outstanding projects that we're waiting for, that had been approved by the ministry, and for which they had gone back to the ministry with the assertion that the amount of funding that had originally been set aside was clearly not sufficient for those projects to be built. And so it isn't just a PDSB specific issue. This is a larger issue that the ministry has apparently decided to address by pausing and pulling the plug.
May I, Mr. Chairman? Yeah. Through you, sir. So I would say, I almost wonder if that works to our advantage, right? This isn't unique to us. Others are in a similar position. It sounds like the ministry, from what I'm hearing, offered a number they knew wasn't feasible or perceived to maybe be feasible, found out it wasn't, and they're pulling everyone's plug. I would still wonder if there's any, it seems like we have nothing to lose. We may as well write a letter if, I'm not directing staff, just a suggestion. We may as well write the letter and say, look, we had asked for 3. Here's one we need. We absolutely need. Of the 3, maybe staff can go back and pick one that has the greatest need, especially when we look at SVI index. And maybe we say, well, what's their response? Perhaps they come back and reiterate the same message and say nothing, but that's my comment.
Okay, Associate Director Gill.
To your chair again, right? I mean, obviously, we will go back to the question and ask it at that. But my understanding is the reason they were looking at 25% is they knew at that time, based on the information courts have provided, there's a number of projects which just are not feasible in their mind. They're not feasible, just too expensive to build that. So they took that funds, the one from those ones, and provided that 25% increase, which they were willing to ask to consider that too. So my feeling is that even though it's a pause, the ministry has taken that funding and given to other ones which were close enough within the 25% feasible. But none of our projects were close to that. They were according to the ministry, our estimate were the difference was just too much for them to be willing to say, yeah, we're willing to give you the money, or you can take the money from the others and use that on that project.
I think it would be awkward for our staff to have to decide one of three schools without creating some ill will with two who would not get when they all need. There's no question. We did this. The saddest part about this for me is, and I probably speak for everybody listening to this, is that there are infants, toddlers, and preschool children in these areas that are not going to get a chance to go to a bona fide child care center that would give them all the love and attention that they can, and maybe they would stay at the school over time. That would just be a wonderful continuation. But there are a lot of children now not going to be able to access this because of ministry decision. Trustee Bailey, did you have your hand up?
Through you, Chair. I notice it says these are 2023 estimated costs. So we're in 2024, heading to 2025, and inflation happens each year. So these are already outdated.
Yeah.
So if we're asking on 2023 costs.
No, so through the chair, it means if the ministry was willing, obviously we will update the cost. That one, just to do that. But I don't think the issue is they were not interested in us exploring that possibility. According to them, the funding they provided, our estimates, which came, they were based on the actual cost based on some of the engineering work we have done. They were almost 3 times of the funding that they have provided. So for them, those projects were just not feasible. And then they rather use the same funds to give those funds to the other projects which were close to the funding that they were provided and within the 25%.
Thank you.
You are right. There can be no doubt that the cost is now higher than what we're looking at these numbers from 2023. I'll give an example. In April of 2022, the minister gave approval for a new school, a replacement building in Calamese, gave us $19.4 million. Then it's going to be $30 million by the time we get a shovel in the ground. And it's the delays cause this. And the delay is not caused by anyone in this room or online. But that's the realities that we're facing, increased costs every day that we lose. Trustee Davis.
Through your chair, I'm just looking at the numbers here, and it just seems like the Shaw Public School one, we're only 2.8 million short, whereas the other ones are over 5. Could we tick off the minister by grabbing 2.8 out of our reserve funds and going ahead with that one, or is that not available to us?
Means through Chair Cameron, if the board was willing to use their reserves, I think it's a slippery slope, in my opinion, in the sense that every time there's a shortfall in the capital funding, they will come back to us and say, well, you can use your reserve for that. First of all, the reserve we have is the operating ones. It's not a capital. So that's number one. So they will not allow that. That's the tussle they're having with TDSB, town board, right? And they want to differentiate between operating reserves as compared to capital ones. So because these are capital, we don't have any reserve for capital ones.
Thank you very much for that great answer. Thank you.
I might suggest that during budget time, we have these discussions about reserve funds that where we need help, and we might not be in a position to spend that here, and we're not allowed to either. Okay, any other questions? Moved, seconded, discussion has taken place. This is here for our information. All in favor, receipt for information, that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Controller Thomas. 9.3 is the former Lakeview Park Public School Heritage Designation. An update here for our information presented by Manager of Enrollment, Suzanne Blakeman.
Thank you, Chair Cameron. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Cameron, and through you. This report is an update to the report we brought to you back in January when we informed the committee of PDSB's appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal of the heritage designation of the former Lakeview Park Public School in South Mississauga. Since then, board staff and legal staff met with their counterparts at the City of Mississauga, and we all agreed that the heritage attributes desirable of being preserved all pertain to the original two-story 1923 section of the school. The later additions that frame that 1923 section of the building are not considered to contribute to the heritage value of the property. A schedule to the bylaw designating the property was amended to clarify the distinction between the different sections of the school. As such, the matter is now resolved and complete until such time as there is a desire to alter or demolish the buildings. The former Lakeview Park Public School is presently being used by Peel Regional Police for training exercises, and the board is retaining the school in the event that it is required to accommodate students from new development in the area. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Let's have the Mississauga trustees move and second this. Trustee Permoli. Trustee McDonald, it's on the floor. Are there any questions about this? Seeing none, all in favor of receipt as information, that is carried. Thank you, Suzanne, again.
Thank you, Chair Cameron.
And 9.4 is application status update, also here for our information, a presentation by our development planner, Zach Tesoro. Hi, Zach.
Thanks, Chair Cameron. Thank you. Through you, Chair, this report is for information and includes a list of development applications reviewed by staff for the months of May, June, and July of 2024, with a location map and the letters sent to the respective municipality. I am now open to take any questions you may have.
That's a lot of questions, unless there are a lot of letters you wrote here, Zach. So this, can we get this on the floor, Trustee Johal? And seconded by Trustee Kamali. Thank you. It's on the floor. Are there any questions about the application status update? Okay, all in favor of receipt for our information? That is carried. Thank you. 9.5 is procurement activity report, also for information. Presentation by Controller Dobson. Wendy, welcome.
Thank you. And through you, Chair Cameron, the procurement activity report is for the period of May 1st, 2024 to July 31st, 2024. Highlights of this report include awarding contracts for flooring services and area rugs, contract for water main upgrade at Applewood Heights, Ridgewood, Sir Wilfrid Laurier, and the Valleys Senior Public School, a contract for Glen Forest Secondary School pool demolition, and a contract for Springfield Public School elevator and washroom renovation. And finally, a contract for multifunctional devices and managed print services was extended for 1 year. I'm happy to take any questions you may have on this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Controller Dobson. Let's move this to the floor. Trustee Johal, move it, please. Trustee Davies, second it. We're on the floor. Are there any questions for Controller Dobson regarding this activity report? Yes, Trustee Permoli, go ahead.
I'm so excited about Springfield and an elevator. Sorry, just do we have information? Okay, here we go. So the time frame on this, if I'm reading this correctly, so how does the time frame play out for the elevator? I just see, so I've got will it be finished by October 25th, 2025? Is that what that means there at the end? Is that the idea? Contract term end date. But they're building the elevator, right? So just because it's a construction project, so I'm just curious.
Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Chair Cameron. We have Isabella Borowski, Assistant Controller here online.
Okay, welcome. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. So happy to report that the construction is going very, very well. We're well underway, so we may be ahead of schedule. So that date that you see there, sorry, I don't have it in front of me. It's end of end of the summer of next year. We're progressing very well, so we may be ahead of the schedule. But I can't report anything concrete yet because it's the elevator, and it's also 3 washrooms on each floor. So the 3 washrooms will be completed, and the last component will be the elevator shaft, and that'll be the last component. As I said, maybe before the summer 2025.
This is amazing for you, Chair. Thank you so much. I know how badly needed this is at this school and what a huge difference it's going to make for that community and how long we've been looking for this elevator. So thank you, everybody. This is great.
Thank you. What's great news? You're being recorded when you say we might be ahead of schedule. This is
Through you, Chair.
of.
I know, but through you, Chair. Again, it really depends, and it's really good news for us when we have good contractors working, and what we're seeing here is really good quality work. So
Excellent, great work. Thank you. I'm just getting about the record. You're doing great work, and I appreciate that we might get this ahead of schedule. Thank you, Trustee Alice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just curious about Glen Forest pool demolition and what the timeline is.
Who would like to handle that? One of the controllers. Yeah, Controller Thomas.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Cameron. The Glen Forest pool demolition is ongoing. There was some abatement that had to take place as well of hazardous materials that were associated with that specific structure. That was completed through the month of August, and I believe it is now, if it's not completely, if all of the debris that was there hasn't been removed, it should be in process anytime. Okay, thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, this is here for our information. All in favor, receive for information? Yes, it's a good news story. Thank you. That is carried. 9.6 is vandalism activity report. Never a good news story, but here to be presented by Wendy Dobson. Go ahead, Controller Dobson.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Cameron. The vandalism activity report that is in front of you consists of the time period of April, May, and June 2024. As you can see, as the year goes on and we're getting closer to the end of the school year, vandalism activity and costs generally go up. For the month of April, May, and June, you will see that there's a list of number of vandalism, suspicious activities, miscellaneous mischief, break and entering, theft, lost keys, 1 arson. These are all included in the report with a number of events that occurred and the costs associated. So I'm happy to take any questions you may have on this report.
Okay, let's move it to the floor first. Trustee Davies and Trustee Bailey. Thank you. It's on the floor. Trustee Davis has a question.
Just the one that's glaring out at me here, Glendale Public School on the 7th of May, $21,000 bunkers. Just wanted a sort of little explanation of that. If you have one, thank you.
Thank you. Oh, thank you, and through you, Chair. Yes, so this was a break and entering. So the head custodian had reported the bunker got broken into. When police arrived on the scene, it was opened. And there was a number of items that were stolen inside the bunker, which included a hedge trimmer, a leaf blower, a push snow blower, also a weed eater. Were all stolen from the bunker. Items were left behind the scene that needed some cleanup as well. And the door itself needed to be repaired as well because it had been damaged, and that's the reason for the significant cost increase.
Through you, Chair, those were covered. That's the insurance claim, is 21,000. Is that correct?
That is correct. Through you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for the report. All in favor of receiving this for our information? That is carried. Thank you. Controller adoption. Item 10 is communications, which we have none. Trustee motions is item 11. There are none for consideration. Item 12 is trustees notices of a motion, which I have none. And item 13 is adjournment. Trustee Davies and Trustee Camoli, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff, for all of the answers that you provided. There's a lot of detail that you have come to the table with to help us understand better. I appreciate that.